UFC's first trip to Abu Dhabi in 2024 is headlined by a very, very high level, highly anticipated fight in the men's bantamweight division. Number 2, Cory Sandhagen, former interim title challenger, and the number 10 ranked Umar Nurmagomedov. Yes, you heard that last name right. We are in for a treat if you enjoy back and forth high expertise, high level MMA. It's going to happen and everything in between in this main event, I believe. Let's talk about the storylines of how we got here and what's at stake, because I believe it's a title shot. Cory Sandhagen will enter this big-time matchup against Umar, riding a 3-fight win streak over the likes of Song Yadong, Marlon, Vera, and most recently, back in August of 2023, Rob Font, which will almost be 1 year to the day since he last competed. Now, in that fight in Nashville, it was supposed to be Cory Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov. However, Umar had to be pulled from the fight due to injury. Rob Font stepped in on relatively short notice, and in that fight, albeit not the most exciting, and Cory Sandhagen will be one to tell you as such. He did, I believe, tear his tricep in that fight. There was some sort of pretty significant injury that went down relatively early, so instead of using his typical rangy, unique striking style, he utilized a skill we don't see him use much, his grappling and wrestling, en route to a very convincing victory over Rob Font, where he won all 5 rounds. Should Cory Sandhagen win against Umar Nurmagomedov and make it his 4th straight victory, I think you have to put him in there next for the undisputed bantamweight championship, the winner of Sugar Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili, that's happening later on in September at Noche UFC at the Sphere. Now, Cory last competed for gold, albeit interim, in October of 2021, and my favorite fight of that year against Petr Yan, a back-and-forth chess match on the feet that was such a beautiful display of MMA, and that's what I just come to expect at this point out of Cory Sandhagen. He is such a unique grappler, striker. Everything that he does in there is different. The way in which he moves. I always thought in his early days he reminded me of how Dominic Cruz moved around the cage, and his footwork and elusiveness is something you don't see all that often. But he's going to have to be on his A game here this weekend, because he is taking on someone who is hungry to prove a point and silence the doubters, Umar Nurmagomedov. Umar enters this fight, his first UFC main event, 28 years of age, with a perfect 17-0 record with 9 finishes and a 6-0 record now, if I'm not mistaken, in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Pardon me, 5-0. He will look to go 6-0. You get the point. Now, what's crazy here for Umar is that he made his way into the bantamweight top 15 and now all the way to number 10 by beating no ranked opponents whatsoever. During the 5-fight win streak, he submitted Sergey Morozov, submitted Brian Kelleher, got a decision victory over Nate Maness, who is no longer with the company, knocked out Raoni Barcelos on the feet in the first round with a body TKO, and then finished a short notice, I'm sorry, not finished, but defeated a short notice replacement in March, Bekzat Almakhan. Now, in that fight, we actually saw Umar get dropped very early on in round 1. However, I'm not of the mind of thinking, oh, he's so overrated, he got knocked down by this guy we've never heard of. No. Eventually, I like to see someone that is so flawless get tested, go through the fire and see if they can come out of it. And that is exactly what Umar did. After being dropped in that fight, he dominated not only the rest of the fight, but he dominated the rest of the first round, immediately recovered, and immediately took over. I believe he had 6 takedowns in that fight, numerous minutes of control time. He kept looking for the finish. To Bekzat's credit, would not allow that to happen. So I was okay with that performance from Umar, because now we know that he has that dog if he needs it. And I believe he's going to need it against someone as highly touted as Cory Sandhagen. I mean, we are talking a very, very significant jump in competition here from going to no ranked opponents ever in his UFC career, to someone who has competed for the interim championship, who has competed with a former undisputed champion, Aljamain Sterling, who has competed with numerous former title challengers and some of the biggest names in the division over the last 5-6 years, Cory Sandhagen. This is a test and a half for Umar, and if he passes it, we now have no choice but to throw him right in for a title shot, even having only one victory over a ranked opponent. And what separates Umar from the rest of the Nurmagomedov heritage and name that we see so frequently now in mixed martial arts is that he doesn't have to default to that wrestling and grappling, at least so quickly on in the fight. He is very talented on the feet with his striking. He has very, very good kicks that are accurate and powerful, rangy striking, even though he's not the biggest of guys, only 5'8", going to be the shorter, less reach here against Cory Sandhagen. At least I would imagine his reach will be shorter. I don't have the X's and O's in terms of the numbers in front of me. You guys have already seen it here on YouTube. But regardless of size, he's proven to be very, very competitive with all of his opponents thus far on the feet. So if he can compete with Cory there, I think that makes the fight very, very interesting. And for Cory, someone who, again, we've only seen tested in the grappling so much. He did get tested and fail pretty quickly against Aljamain Sterling a few years ago. But outside of that, we've not seen him get tested defensively, and offensively, we know that he has game down there after his win over Rob Font. I think these guys could essentially neutralize the strengths of one another, which leaves us with a chess match of a fight here in the men's bantamweight division, the division that is the best from top to bottom in the UFC right now, in my opinion. Lightweight, of course, is a very close second, but I think bantamweight has been on fire the past few years, has a lot of moving pieces, new challengers rising, new champions such as Sean O'Malley, and we have veterans squeezed in the middle like Cory Sandhagen and Marlon Vera, who we're going to talk about in just a second. What do you make of this fight? Is this a little bit too much too soon for Umar Nurmagomedov? Should he have gotten another test with a top 15 or top 10 opponent before getting thrown to the wolves, such as Cory Sandhagen? Or do you think he is ready? Is he built different? Is he from a different mold of fighter? And can Cory Sandhagen fend off the fast rising prospect, make his win streak 4 in a row, and earn his spot back in the bantamweight title picture? Again, I think regardless of who the winner is here, they should be next for the undisputed title. So give me your thoughts on this in the comments below. And now we will get into the rest of UFC Abu Dhabi because we have a lot to go over. This is a very, very stacked card. And we start with the co-main event, a short notice replacement co-main event. Shara Magomedov will look to remain perfect against Michal Oleksiejczuk. The 13-0 Shara Magomedov has 11 knockouts of those 13 victories and will look to make it 14-0 and 3-0 in the UFC. To do so, he is taking on his toughest opponent to date in Michal Oleksiejczuk. Shara just fought June 22nd against Antonio Tricoli. He got a third-round TKO in that fight, and in his debut, got a decision victory over Bruno Silva, which is a pretty tough debut fight in the UFC, if you ask me. But now he's returning in less than 2 months, short notice here, asking to come up big. Putting him in a main event spot shows just how much the UFC believes in this man and the hype around him and his skill set, what he can do in this middleweight division. Can he finish Michal Oleksiejczuk? Can he beat Michal Oleksiejczuk? Because if we want to go over here to Michal, he's lost 3 of his last 4 fights, sure, but look at who it's against. Caio Bahaio back in April of 2023, a top 15 middleweight. Michel Pereira, who's on a 6, 7, maybe even 8 fight win streak, now ranked in the middleweight division. And most recently, June 1st of 2024, a submission loss to Kevin Holland, a top 15 welterweight, and now returning to middleweight for his second consecutive fight here soon. And if you want to dig a little deeper into that 3 out of 4 fight losing skid that he's on, all 3 of those losses were via submission. Michal has only been knocked out 1 time in his 8 professional losses. Shara has never gotten a submission victory before. So will he be able to get a knockout over someone who is a very powerful, very dangerous striker in his own right in Michal? Or will this be a back and forth affair where we could see a big time upset in the first loss of Shara career? The featured bout of the evening will have Marlon Vera, who's coming off of a title fight loss to Sean O'Malley earlier this year in March, versus Deiveson Figueiredo, former men's flyweight champion, now 2-0 in the bantamweight division. This fight is sure to deliver for the fans. Marlon Vera is looking to bounce back. He's lost 2 of his last 3 fights. Let us not forget, he got that title fight against O'Malley, the rematch, after having beaten Pedro Munoz and losing to Cory Sandhagen prior to that. So a lot of people thought it was an undeserved title fight. It is what it is. Cory Sandhagen was hurt, so they gave it to the next man up. Plus, you had the rematch built in. I'm okay with it. But this feels like a really, really big fight for the future of Marlon's career. Although he's only 31 years old, he has been in the UFC since, wow, this is a lot of scrolling, November of 2014. So we are coming up on his 10-year anniversary in the company, meaning he would have been 21 years old when he debuted. He's been in there with some of the best fighters in the world, some of the best fighters in the lower weight classes history of the UFC, like Cory Sandhagen, like Jose Aldo, and a plethora of other big names, big opportunities against Frankie Edgar, Rob Font, Dominic Cruz. He's been in there with a who's who, and Deiveson Figueiredo has been at flyweight, and since coming to bantamweight, he's 2-0 against some pretty big names as well. A victory over Rob Font via decision in his debut in the weight class, and a submission at UFC 300 against former champion Cody Garbrandt. We knew it was just a matter of time for the 36-year-old Figueiredo before he moved from flyweight to bantamweight, and it has proved to pay off in dividends for him thus far with 2 big victories over 2 big names. Yes, I believe that the winner of the main event, Umar and Cory, should be the next number 1 contender, but you could make an argument here for Deiveson that should he beat Marlon Vera and extend to 3-0, being that he's won a championship in another weight class already, that he could be the number 1 contender. I'll leave that up for you guys to discuss in the comments below. But regardless, if Figgy wins this fight, he is in title contention for sure. Maybe in a position where he can wait to see what happens with the division and the winner of this main event versus the winner of O'Malley and Merab. Or maybe he'll take another fight in the meantime because he is staying very, very active. This will be his 3rd fight in the division since debuting in it in December of last year. Marlon is known to start very slow. Deiveson is a very aggressive fighter, so their styles will clash, absolutely guaranteed. Marlon also shows to keep the fight standing with his reach, with his striking, who has very sneaky knockout power. Deiveson, a knockout specialist, really just a finish specialist in general down at flyweight, but in the bantamweight division has really honed in on his grappling and utilized that in his victory over Rob Font and especially in his victory over Cody Garbrandt. What will he choose to do here? Will he look to grapple and take down Marlon Vera and look for that path to victory, or will we take a chance and strike with Cheeto? And things get real interesting in this next fight because we have Tony El Cucuy, the boogeyman Ferguson, returning again, this time at 170 pounds to take on former lightweight Michael Chiesa. This will be Tony's first fight since turning 40 years old and his first fight in 2024, and he will look to end what has become a 7-fight losing streak. Now, of course, I don't want to completely bash on Tony because let's look at, first of all, what he did prior to this win streak, racking up 12 straight victories, becoming an interim lightweight champion, never quite got that golden goose fight against his rival, Khabib Nurmagomedov, a fight that really got away, one that we never got to see as MMA fans. But since May 9th of 2020, when he fought Justin Gaethje in an interim championship fight and lost, it started a downward spiral. He went on to lose to Charles Oliveira, Beneil Dariush, Michael Chandler, Nate Diaz, Bobby Green, and in December, Paddy Pimblett, who, after his victory last week at UFC 304, entered into the lightweight rankings. So those are all very high-level opponents, all with very big names as well. I would say pair that with this being at 170 pounds, Michael Chiesa, not the most dangerous guy if we're talking damage imposed upon Tony Ferguson. This is a fight that Tony could end the win streak with, but to me, still a very uphill battle. The 36-year-old Chiesa will be considerably bigger when these two step into the cage. He was always big for lightweight. I don't even know how he made the weight class, to be quite honest with you. And he doesn't look small at welterweight. He's 16-7 as a professional MMA fighter. Been in the UFC. I don't know what happened there. Now I'm still keeping the twang. Let's erase that.
What the fuck is that?
He is here to recover his own losing streak. He's lost 3 straight fights. So these two fighters combined are coming in on a 10-fight losing streak. Someone's streak will come to an end. Someone's streak shall continue. Now, the losing skid for Michael Chiesa, all at welterweight. Vicente Luque, Sean Brady, and Kevin Holland. Again, all ranked opponents. So there are no bad losses in terms of name value on either resume, but losses are losses at the end of the day. This is a big fight for 2 OGs, 2 seasoned veterans, 2 Ultimate Fighter winners to right the wrongs in their career. We next have a big fight in the women's strawweight division as the number 7 ranked Mackenzie Dern will be taking on the number 10 ranked Loopy Godinez. Mackenzie Dern entering this fight on her first losing streak of her UFC career, having lost back-to-back fights against Jessica Andrade, a former champion, and Amanda Lemos in February, a fight of the night outing. And Loopy Godinez enters this fight after a loss against Virna Jandiroba in March. We've seen what Virna has done since then, beating and submitting Amanda Lemos a couple of weeks ago, and now to believe, at least for me, the number 1 contender for a 115-pound title shot was Zhang Weili. But before that, Loopy was really putting it all together, had won 4 straight fights, including a top 15 win over Tabitha Ricci. I believe I heard in an interview with Mackenzie Dern from MMA Junkie that Loopy already has the 3rd most takedowns in women's strawweight history, maybe even women's MMA history for the UFC for that matter. And she's only been in the company dating back to April of 2021. She has been super active in this time, and she is an absolute beast with her wrestling, with her grappling. Her biggest issue is that sometimes she won't utilize it and get into a brawl, something that Mackenzie Dern is no stranger to either. And we know the story with Mackenzie Dern's career. She's a former Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion, transitioned into MMA, has had a very successful career, but a little bit more red on that resume as of late. Dating back to October of 2021, she has fought 6 times with only 2 victories in that time span against Tisha Pennington and Angela Hill. But all of those losses are to highly ranked competition. Yan Xiaonan was another loss, who's a former title challenger, and Marina Rodriguez, who at that point was next up in line for a title shot. Unfortunately, she just never got it. Mackenzie is back with Jason Perillo, as far as I've seen on social media and heard in some MMA content throughout the community, which is big for her and her striking, because we had seen her kind of go through waves with her striking, where we've seen improvements, we've seen de-improvements, like we've seen her go a little bit everywhere, and she's been in some firefights. As I just said, I believe her fight with Amanda Lemos at 298 was a fight of the night winner or contender for sure, and they absolutely just banged it out on the feet. I could see this fight turning into such. I don't know if Loopy will look to wrestle and grapple because of the dangers that Mackenzie Dern will present on the ground, but I don't see Mackenzie going for takedowns against Loopy Godinez either, which leads me to believe we're going to see these two stand and trade for 15 straight minutes. Mackenzie has to end her 2-fight skid before she falls too far away from title contention, and Loopy Godinez wants to get back on the horse, make it 5 out of 6 victories, and put herself closer to the top 5. And then some other fights I just want to mention, as I've been doing the last few weeks, that I think will be fun or that you should look out for on the rest of the card. Joel Alvarez and Elvis Brenner in the lightweight division is sure to deliver some goods. Azamat Murzakanov and Alonzo Minifield is number 14 versus number 15 in the light heavyweight division. And in the second fight of the night, Jai Herbert versus Rolando Bedoya could lead to some very exciting action and potentially a knockout. So be sure to let me know in the comments below all of your thoughts and your predictions for UFC Abu Dhabi. Is the main event between Umar Nurmagomedov and Cory Sandhagen a number 1 contender fight? Or if Deiveson Figueiredo beats Marlon Vera, could he be the number 1 contender for that Sean O'Malley and Merab fight in September. Let me know your thoughts on that division and all of the other big fights in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Every single week, I will give my breakdowns of some X's and O's, but more importantly, the storylines and what is at stake going into every fight. I also recap the most meaningful results every single week and give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. You can also follow the show on social media and on your favorite audio listening platforms such as Spotify and Apple. If you enjoy podcast episodes, they release every Friday and Monday. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the PFL if you're watching. Enjoy the UFC if you're watching. Enjoy both if you're watching both. And I will see you in the next video.